Fish has been food for people here for 4,500 years. That's when the NN River formed. It was the fish not only fed human beings, but they fed entire ecosystems, right? They fed cultures. And so, you know, this cannery is part of something very old and very deep.
A lot of the native people, my ancestry, came here and lived in the village because they had job opportunity here that was created by the cannery being here. And that was your infrastructure or your economy. So it actually created South Naknek.
All of the references, you never see the word diamond,
right,
but you see the figure. My theory is they said, oh, it's Naknek, they're two N's. And it became the diamond NN. They considered these canneries to be their gems. I think the NN, since it was one of the earliest canneries, and it certainly lasted longer than any of the others, was really the APA's crown jewel.
This is the White House. Come on in. The superintendent had to have a servant, and they had a way of notifying, you know.
You have seen it? If you come under here, a button here, and so the superintendent could call and if he needed anything, and the little bell is in the kitchen.
The little bell would ring, and the servant would come find out what they needed. The superintendent's room, master bedroom. Look at that old hutch. Some of the old stuff.
But look at this. This is the tongue and groove. Mm-hmm. So, like, just this room alone is representative of a very specific architecture. I mean, these things have been here since I was a kid. Actually doing just little odd jobs as a teenager, and then I started working here when I was 18 years old to work my way through college, and surprisingly, it was the reason why I wanted to become a historian. You know, is that I'm an Alaskan historian, because what I experienced here in South Naknek was very different than what you kind of hear in your Alaska history textbooks. And, you know, we're not the end of the road. We're not the bridge to nowhere. We're the bridge. And in many ways, this experience, you know, showed me that we are global. One of my jobs was to run the bins, the bin person, and each bin could hold about 30, 40, 50,000 pounds of fish. So the slimers would all be down on the floor and the processors. And also what was so fascinating, and just speaking as a cannery worker, why those windows are so important is you could look out there and know what time it was based on the tide. And there's a reason why those words sound so close together. The Old English word for time is tide. They have a rooted word. And so you get this your watch really becomes secondary. It's really that river that dictates everything for the next 6 weeks of your life.
It was a bunkhouse, right?
The famous Bristol Bay fish pew. This is what they used to, in the sailboat days especially. They would offload their boats, one fish at a time, by stabbing them and throwing them into the tally scow.
But look at that, that's pretty awesome, isn't it? So the lines used to go right down into the cannery.
The way that you canned and cooked fish was one thing, but how you cooled it off so that you had a good product was another.
The cans would come out of the retorts, and then they'd push them into here, and this was the cooling shed, and then they'd stack them up in here, and it was a wonderful space because it'd be nice and warm, and you could hear the pop, pop, pop of the cans as they cooled, and the logic was when the tide came up, it would push the cool air from the tides up into the cooling shed and cool down the cans.
You have like 3 boards missing all the way along the whole warehouse for one row of fish, and then open strips that let the cool air come up naturally. Yep.
That again is wisdom of the land that is indicative to this region. I mean, it goes way back, and people being able to take advantage of the surrounding landscape. As far as we know, that was the original saltery. so it would have been one of the original buildings.
It started out as salt packing, right, before canning came along, and so you can see the remnants of that structure. The structure is still here, it's used for a different purpose, but it starts to tell a story that just keeps going back, goes off in different directions. And
Chinese bunkhouses, and you had the Filipino mess halls, and you have all the different fishermen who were kind of grouped into their various ethnicities too. The native bunkhouse too, the map shows that, even though we evolved and we changed, the roots of some of those stories are represented in the buildings themselves. That's why this is important, because those stories may not exist in an archive. Maybe most of those people have passed on and those stories taken with them, but they're still here in these buildings, and that's another reason why they matter. You still get a sense of who worked here. Even the machines that aren't used anymore tell this kind of larger story. And I guess even the cannery itself becomes its own kind of ecosystem. When you think of the tides rising and falling 22 feet twice a day, in 24-hour light, you had machinery going all the time, but it had a life of its own, and the people who worked, and that energy was truly pretty significant. It was tapping into again something even bigger. And I think that's really what makes this effort so much fun. It's not just preserving the story of industry, it's preserving the story of how we connect to our place.